Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Natasha.
I have a cake for you.
I mean, that's the stance you take when you're getting a cape put. I mean, I don't want to be, rude.
Not have to wear it.
Thank you. And I want you to know, thanks to Natasha, and also, I typically wear my cape on the inside. So if you don't have a cape on the outside, you can keep it on the inside. Am I amplified and ready to rock and roll? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do today is we're going to test the limits of what is probable, what is profitable, and what is possible when we bring our imagination to the workspace. When we bring our imagination to our homes, when we bring our imagination to the streets, when we bring our imagination to a talks at Google. What? So instead of starting at the beginning, we're going to start at the ending. So please stand up. Okay, on the count of 3, you are going to give yourselves and each other the best standing ovation you have in you. 1, 2, 3. Yes! Woo! 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 Okay. Okay. You can sit down physically, but stay standing emotionally for the whole time. So I want you to remember that, all of us here have and will dare to share our wildest ideas, and we'll be a little scared. Or we will deign to raise our hands in an all-hands meeting and share an idea that scares us. Or we might be taking the stage and giving a presentation, and we're a little freaked out. And so you can remember this moment when we all gave each other and ourselves a standing ovation, and you can take that with you, okay? So I have spent the last 10 years consciously bringing creativity into the workspace and imagination. And I'm talking about when I've worked, and before that, a little less consciously, hadn't really developed this idea of creative trespassing. But when I was bagging groceries, when I worked as a barista, when I worked in a museum, when I worked in technology, and as I got more conscious about this, infusing imagination and creativity, I started to notice 2 things that were really astounding to me. And the first thing is that we don't need to work in a job or a field that is uniquely creative in order to be uniquely creative within our work. And the second thing that I learned is that if we bring imagination to confront our self-limiting beliefs, obstacles, everyday challenges, that we will experience unlimited solutions, ideas, and innovations. True story, news at 10. I'm done. And that's what compelled me to write this book, Creative Trespassing, which I'll show you. Oh my gosh, it's so red and white and fantastic. Shoom. Okay. And so my talk today is really about some moments or stories where I learned to see my self-limits as opportunities to creatively trespass, to maybe add something that wasn't there and enliven not just myself, but colleagues and the mission and vision of the companies that I worked for. So, anybody here go to contemporary art museums? Okay, about 50%. And somebody's like, meh, nah, only if it's a free day. That's fine. That's fine. I sort of felt like, meh, when somebody offered me a job in a contemporary art museum. I'm like, I don't understand the rules. They're always saying, don't touch things. And then it's contemporary art, so they're like, why aren't you touching it? Very confusing. And they wanted somebody like a rule breaker from the outside to come inside and create wild programs and generate new revenue streams and increase attendance. Pretty regular metrics for functioning, right? And so I got there and I did what I do in theater. That's my background. You sort of assess the situation. You're like, who's my audience? What do I have to work with? What are the props? And I realized there was this weird thing I'd never heard of called Employee of the Month. Anybody familiar with it? Oh, and I'm like, Employee of the Month? That sounds fantastic. How do I win that? And right, you're laughing again. HR was like, Tanya, you don't win it, you earn it. And I was like, then I will earn your vote and win it. And here's what happened. I'll show you. So the program I created was called Out of the Cubicle, because I was like, they brought me in to think outside of the box. They stuffed me in a cubicle. Ironic or scary, it's a fine line. And I decided to create a programmatic area online where people could see that those of us who thought museums are kind of sterile and the rules I don't understand, and am I okay to go in? Will I fit in? I created this program where I ran around the offices and actually got to know my colleagues and made these videos that expose the fact that art museums, just like any other office culture, are unique and boring and exciting and everything in between. And so people started watching this program. They came in through the United States, then other countries. And so I was doing my job, essentially. But here's the critique that people had. Museum board, and this was a corporately structured museum. There were probably 200 employees, and there were lots of rules. And I said, working and fun, they're not mutually exclusive. And then I showed them why they're not. So I did launch programs in the museum. That was part of my job. I increased revenue streams. So not only did people come in through the videos, but they literally wanted to come and see what was happening in the museum. I also created a program called Arm Wrestling for Art. Crazy. Where I used my teeny tiny nonprofit budget to buy an arm wrestling table, because that makes sense. And then we put it in the middle of the museum because the problem I was trying to solve was, who here likes art? Who here can afford to buy the art that they really like? All the hands go down. And I thought, how do we democratize the acquiring of art? How do we make art accessible for everyone? What do museums not do? They don't give away art. And so I thought, let's make people sweat it out and arm wrestle for a piece of art. That seems fair. That's how we'd solve the problem as kids. That's how we're going to do it as adults. So we increased attendance numbers. That's my job. Brand awareness. Everybody started to know about Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art. It's a small contemporary art museum, but it had all this new life and people coming through the doors and through the videos. Earned media, which anybody in marketing knows is you pay a lot and then you're like, oh, that didn't have an impact. We didn't go viral. Okay. So we just earn it the old-fashioned way, and then you drop the mic. Okay. Let's see. So once upon a time, I was giving a talk at a startup week, and these two engineers from American Express came up to me after my talk. They were all like, oh my God, that was so cool, creativity and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, we want to start an innovation lab in our company, but we have no buy-in from our boss, no money, no space, and nobody thinks it's a good idea. What's your solve, Tanya? Oh my gosh. I'm like, totally easy. I'm going to introduce you to an artist named Meg Dogood. So Meg lives in Chicago. She had a dream. Her dream was to have 4 walls, a gallery space. That's it. She wanted 4 walls to be able to put people's artwork in from around the world. She had no money. She was like a full-time artist. No patrons, no space, no buy-in, no American Express card, I'm certain. And here's what she did to solve that problem. So she didn't have the limiting belief that the guys at American Express had. So she created Clutch Gallery. It's a 25 square inch space in the heart of her purse. It's totally absurd and wackily wonderful, right? And so she solved a problem. And I'll show you one of her installations. It's a painting show. And so it goes to show you that this, had she had the same limiting belief, like I don't have money, I don't have space, I don't have buy-in, she never would have created this innovative space. And artists love the challenge of trying to create artwork for 25 by 25 square inches. I know. Okay. So who here went to first grade? Great. I knew we'd have something in common. So I went to first grade. I was 5 years old, which was younger than the kids, not because I was real smart, but because my parents had sex at a certain period of time, and I was born in September. So there was no like, she's so smart. So I was younger than the other kids, and I was super chubby, but it was all focused in my belly, so it was like I had a gut, And I wore eyeglasses. And anybody wear eyeglasses as a 4, 5, 6-year-old? Fantastic. We thought we were really cool, okay? My mom said, "You're cute, Tanya." I felt sophisticated and more intellectual than my counterparts. I was ready to rock. So I get on the school bus for the first day of first grade, and I'm like, I'm looking good, what? And I've got my glasses, and I'm just rock and roll, But there didn't seem to be any early adopters of me. That's fine. And so I get on the bus, and I see a girl who's about my age, and the bus is about to take off. So I slide into one of those pleather benches and sit next to her, and I'm like, let the day begin. And she looks me square in the eye, and I'm like, I like this assertiveness, And she's like, 4 eyes. I know. So every single day of the first week of school, I get on the bus and I try to avoid the child tyrant. I'd find a seat over here. And somehow that little menace managed to sneak in and call me 4 eyes. And I was sad and lonely and didn't know what to do. So I consulted my mom. And my mom was like, Tanya, 4 eyes are better than 2. And I'm like, not only does that little girl suck at math, but she sucks at life. And so I was like, great, I'm armed and I'm ready to rock and roll. And so I get on the bus with my newfound phrase, and I sit next to her on purpose. And she's like, 4 eyes. And I'm like, 4 eyes are better than 2. And she said, no, they're not. And I said, nothing. I had no comeback at all. The good news is that I grew up. And I was talking about this story the other day, and somebody's like, what happened to this little girl? And I'm like, well, she didn't invent Google Glass, okay? And she's not a co-founder of Warby Parker. But what I've learned over years of being in the world is that little critic is not only on the outside of us, but a lot of times we have that little child tyrant on the inside of us. And also what I've learned is that when we see her or him or non-gender binary person, and we acknowledge and we say, okay, I see you, and we let go, that's super helpful. And I learned another thing too, that nobody writes books or plays or makes software for or about anybody who's perfect, right? You wouldn't want to read a book if everybody fit in and was perfect. To be perfect or to fit in is to be invisible. And I just didn't want to be invisible. So that was a really good moment for me to learn. That's me. Stop it right now. Is my mom here? Look at that little, and clearly I was going to audition for the Village People the next day. Oh my gosh. Okay. So at some point in my career, I received a phone call from a software company named Axosoft. And they were like, Tanya, we've seen you performing and presenting around town. We'd like to talk to you about software. And I'm like, software? That sounds awesome. I don't know what they're talking about. I love cashmere. And so I took a leap of faith. I really do, but I can't afford it. But I go to secondhand stores and purchase it. Thank you. Okay, so I took a leap of faith and I decided to meet with this software company. And I met with the CEO at the time, LaDan Shojai, and she's like, we really like your energy. That's why we brought you in. And I'm like, I like your energy. That's why I came in. She's like, but we're not offering you a job. And I'm like, okay, why am I here? I don't understand this. And she's like, but you know, we've always wanted to have a brand evangelist. You would make a great evangelist. And I was like, that would totally freak my Jewish mom out. Yeah, I want to be an evangelist. Can I get a witness? And so I started work at this company, and my first day on the job, I was like, what is this magical software we're selling? Is it like a tool for telling stories? Is it a magical paintbrush that allows artists to make work on wall? Like, what is it? And she was like, oh, it's a B2B project management software for software developers. And I was like, trapped in slow motion. Like, what are you saying? I don't understand that. And soon I learned I didn't understand a lot of stuff. You know, I would hear people talking about AI, and I was like, oh, that's when a British person is at a pub and they ask for more beer. They're like, hey, I'd like another pint. That's not the case. I also heard people talking about, they were like, open source, open source, open source. And I'm like, don't kiss that person. I'm pretty sure that that's no bueno. So I had a lot of learning to do. And unfortunately and fortunately, within the first 2 months of being there and knowing absolutely very little about software, my boss came to a colleague and I and said, we are going to host a Girls in Technology event. It's an inaugural one, and I want to show up in a big way. So come up with a big idea around women in technology. This is April 2015, just to give some context. So my colleague and I, Sarah, we were like brainstorming, women, came up with nothing. Then, you know, I went for a little walk, and I started thinking about women in the tech space and women in lots of spaces, and how a lot of times we're not seen, heard, or celebrated for the superheroes we are. And so I came up with this symbol. I didn't come up with her. She's been around for a long time. The bathroom lady, she's here. She's made an appearance. I've seen her twice today. Thank you. And I knew that this symbol was, you know, immediately recognizable across cultures, across genders. And I didn't know anything else. I just had like, it wasn't even an idea. It was just a symbol. And I brought the symbol back to my colleague, and I'm like, here she is. And my colleague's like, okay. And that was sort of that. But I couldn't shake the fact that, see the shape of her dress? It's a triangle. And I thought, gosh, yeah, it's a dress, and it looks kind of like the shape of a cape. And so I printed out the vector and made a few lines, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, right there. And then Axosoft, we came up with the campaign, It Was Never a Dress. And I'm gonna show you what happened with it because I think it's important to play. Let's see.
When Tania and Sarah came to me and they gave me their pitch on this idea, I immediately saw it and I thought, wow, yes, I completely agree. This was big.
Initially, I thought of a symbol that was easily recognizable, and I thought of the bathroom lady because she's everywhere. She's everywhere in the world. That lady gets around. So I printed out an image of the symbol, and I took a pencil and started drawing some lines, and very quickly she had a cape on, and she was fully present, and it was as if she'd been there this whole time, and I just hadn't seen her.
We were at the conference, so we were pretty busy, you know, we were on social media. We saw the first tweet, and we were like, wow, this is great, you know, someone is really connecting with the image, and then Huffington Post retweeted it. That was kind of the beginning of it going viral.
And then bam, in 24 American hours, it just blew up. I think people were very excited to see that they aren't just a symbol of the mundane, but they're actually a symbol of the extraordinary.
We're trying to create a community and a forum. So a woman was telling us about how she had showed the image to her young son and daughter, and then later they had gone to the restroom and the kids were excited and they said, hey mom, we're going into the superheroes bathroom. And I thought, that's how we measure success, is the next generation. Now they are seeing things differently and their perceptions have been shifted.
We started having an overwhelming request for merchandise. However, we didn't want to commoditize the conversations that were taking place on It Was Never a Dress. So we thought, let's start a STEAM scholarship with ASU, and we plan on fueling that scholarship with the merchandise. Tania was brought into Axosoft as an evangelist, and part of the things that she is phenomenal with is public speaking. It's only natural for her to be popping up maybe in your city soon, where she will be speaking on this campaign and helping keep the movement going.
It Was Never a Dress campaign is really a story, and it's also a proposition for other people to share their stories. So yes, I will be going out into the world and speaking publicly about It Was Never a Dress. You can invite me to your hometown. There's no crowd that's too small or too large.
Because if we see women differently, we see the world differently. If we see women differently, we see the world differently. If we see women differently, we see the world differently. Text drop.
One thing that was really astounding about this moment in terms of my work life and my creative life merging was my job. I was embedded in marketing. I was an evangelist. My job was to learn the product and to go out into the world and preach the good word of B2B project management software. The end. And being presented with this challenge, right? Solve a problem that you really know very little about. You've been a woman in technology for 2 months. Do something. And I really saw that as an opportunity to use some of the skills that I had developed while as a playwright in theater school to see and engage an audience with text, with a story. And I went above and beyond my job because it was something that was important to do. And even though I no longer work for Axosoft, we created this beautiful thing that's bigger than all of us together. And something that I write about in Creative Trespassing that a lot of people forget is that we have an opportunity to leave a creative legacy at our work. We can leave people and processes in better shape than when we arrived there. And it took me a long time to learn that. I mean, I definitely had some jobs where I'm like, you refill your own paper. Oh, and I was out. Ink cartridge, my pie hole, you know? And then I left, right? And so I'm really proud of myself that I left this. And I think that that's really important because as we sort of, conflate or like, we remove the space between work and life, between fun and work, that we actually have all of these opportunities to create. So I would like to do something right now. I feel like we started at the ending, so let's end at the beginning, right? And after this, I would love to have a little Q&A/conversational. That's Italian for conversation. So we're just going to take a moment to close our eyes, and I'm going to lead you through a very short mind's eye journey. If you've not done a mind's eye journey, all it means is that I will gently guide you, and you just receive. That's it. So I want you to imagine one of your self-limiting beliefs. And by that, I mean a belief that you hold that stops you from having and experiencing more joy, more creativity, and pursuing your dreams. So it could be anything from, I don't deserve a raise, to, I can't call myself an artist, or I don't belong here. So see this self-limiting belief. I want you to gently let it go. And when you feel like you've let it go, and this is a longer process than just now, but when you've let it go for now, I want you to open your eyes. Okay. And now that you've let something go, there's room to take a leap. So we're going to stand up. And this isn't a big performative gesture. The most important part about taking a leap is that we're doing it together. And so it's bend your knees just a little bit, just slightly. And again, it's not about jumping highest. It's just about, yeah, we didn't sign any waivers. This is a gentle jump. Again, the most important part is that we do it together. So I'm going to count, on the count of 3, we're going to gently take a leap of faith together. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And let's see. And also, you know, here's something I've worked really hard and focused to feel comfortable in front of human beings and presenting. And even I get nervous sometimes, and I'm guessing that all of us get nervous sometimes. And you can remember the beginning if you need a standing ovation from all of us and you. And you can also remember that when you're leaping into the unknown, when you're starting a new job, when you're tackling a new project, when you're sharing your ideas, that we're all leaping with you, okay? I think that's helpful to know. All right. I would love to engage in a little questions and answers. And if you have no questions, I'll ask you questions. But I don't think you're going to want that. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
I was like, oh, you're very, very intuitive.
I am.
How do you write a book?
How do you write a book? This is actually something that I write about in Creative Trespassing, whether you're wanting to write a book or make a career shift or actually try on a different role, you start. And so, you write a few lines about what you think the book is about. Maybe you write a few lines about what you want your next job to look like or what you want your next project to look like. And then you leave it for a day. And then you come back a day later. And then you don't look at it and you write some more. Okay? So this is how I've written this book. And this is how a lot of people, authors that I know, write, is they write a little, a lot. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people, if you're thinking about or you already have a practice of writing in a journal or writing a book or whatever, a lot of times we have this self-limiting belief that if we put ourselves on a schedule, and if we do not adhere to that schedule, we will just stop. Game over. And I would suggest to you that even if you mess up your own schedule that only you gave you, that you forgive yourself and continue on. Okay, so do a little, a lot. And also, I find that accountability for me personally, I like to have sort of my personal board of directors that I'm like, you guys, here's what I'm doing. I will send you some pages. Would you? I don't need you to read them. I just you need to know they're coming. Or I need you to read them and I need some feedback. I need to beta test these ideas. Very keen of beta testing lives and projects. Love it. So, yeah, that's a little, a lot. Yeah, thanks, Kate.
I was curious about when you were saying you were getting criticism around, oh, she's just running around having fun, and how you felt about that, whether you were just like, blew it off because you had all those check boxes of I'm so great, or did that feel bad to you? I was curious what you felt.
That's a great question. All of the above. And I remember actually when that news was delivered, we were in an all-hands meeting for just the museum staff. And there were like 20 of us there, and my boss sort of delivered the news of like, there are people who are really concerned, who find this problematic. And he's like, and I want you to know I got your back, right? And then I made a realization, because it hurt. I mean, I'm human beings, right? You know, when somebody says, hey, all the effort that you're putting into making this organization better is not right. You are not doing it the right way. I felt hurt, you know, I felt like, oh my gosh, how do I this is the only way I know how to contribute, and la la la. It was great that my boss had my back. And I also learned something that was freaky and unexpected, which was that joy is actually really confrontational to people who are not choosing to live within a state of joy. And that was both disheartening and really powerful information. Yeah, so that's why I sort of preach the good word of joy, because it is a mindset and it's something we can choose even in rigid, rule-bound environments. It's really the only thing that we have. Yeah, thank you.
So how do you deal with the perception, if you've received this, that when you switch projects, that people might think that you're unreliable or flighty or unfocused? How do you deal with that?
I wrote an entire book all about that. I'm being totally sincere. So for years, people would say, so what do you do? And I was like, I am a curator of everything, whatever. I just made stuff up until I realized that if I assessed my skills, my superpowers, and understood what those were, then it opened up everything. Then I could go into any field, any job. So the clarity comes in knowing what you're bringing, because you bring that to whatever situation. You bring that to the supermarket. You bring that to your family parties. You bring that to work. So the sooner I understood what I brought, the easier it was for me to leap into different forms. And that's something, we obviously live in a system and a society that's very siloed, and we have business cards to prove that, right? You are a developer, you are, and I remember I was at a conference, I was speaking to 500 CIOs. Any CIOs here? Great, let the jokes rip. So I was in the back of the room, and there were 500 CIOs, all dressed in suits, varying colors from dark blue to black. And it was a Saturday, so they didn't have to wear suits. So they were like this. And I was in the back watching the speaker before me. And I was freaking out because he was talking about like AI and IA and VR. And I'm like, unless they want a monologue about like, TMI or UTI or BMWs, I had nothing. I was totally scared. And to make matters worse, he's killing it, right? The CIOs are going wild. They're like, and I'm like, where's the exit? And then the MC grabs the microphone and he's like, let's thank Steve. And then we'd like to welcome to the stage Tania Katan. She is a CIO. And I'm like, oh, hell no, I'm not a CIO. Another self-limiting belief. And I'm not a CIO. And then he grabs the mic and he's like, Chief Inspiration Officer. And I was like, oh my God. So what I learned from that moment, and I write about it because it was so impactful, is that I thought when people ask you, what do, that it meant, what's your job title? But in that moment, I realized, it's my purpose. That's what I do. And the more certain and comfortable you are with that, the more you can bring it in. And when somebody says, what do? You can make up a job title. You can tell them, here's my purpose, or sit down. I'm not going to give you an elevator pitch. If you really want to know, let me share what I do in the world. So, great question. Thank you.
So for people who may not consider themselves super creative,
Yep.
Are there tools or strategies that you advise to maybe tap into creativity? You mentioned like with your campaign, you figured that out on a walk, or some kind of strategy where maybe we step away from our day-to-day not so creative work to tap into the creative.
Absolutely. That's a great question. So first of all, I would like to say that creativity is defined as really using your imagination. It's not about making art or painting or da-da-da. You could do that. But creativity is about using your imagination. So one thing that I recommend in creative trespassing is to ditch school. Anybody ditch school as a kid? Yeah. We learned all the skills we need to disrupt our patterns and habits that are keeping us stuck. So what I recommend is that you get up from your desk. You don't have anything to prove by working until you're sweating and you're regretting the job you took, okay? Nothing to prove. Get up, take a 5-minute, 10-minute walk. Stanford did a study on walking and the impact of creativity, and it raises your creativity by 60%. So when you find yourself trapped in, trying to solve a problem or just stuck in a routine, get up and go for a walk. And in fact, there's something called the Museum of Walking that I'm a board member of. And it's true. And you'll look it up. And basically, the museum exists outside of the wall. There are no walls to the museum. What? Why don't you Google that later? Oh my God, I was trying to weave that in. Anyway, and then throughout the book, I have these things called productive disruptions, and they're exercises because I know that when we disrupt these holding patterns, we actually do more work and have more joy in that state of creating work or co-creating work. Yeah. Thank you.
This work is incredible, and you are a phenomenal speaker. I'm sure you wake up every morning with ideas, but what's next for you? You've written a book, you're a public speaker.
Oh my gosh. Gosh, this is where I think my meditation practice has messed me up. What's next is what's now. I don't know what else to say about that. What's next is me continuing to speak. So a lot of companies bring me in to give talks and teach workshops on how do we use creative skills from maybe theater or contemporary art to innovate from within our company. I would like to be doing more and more. I could do that all day. And I think, a lot of people ask, well, you come from performance, don't you want to perform again on a stage? And to me, the most impactful work is being an outsider on the inside. And then you quickly realize when you're like, hey, you guys, I do wild things, and like, I do too. Oh my God, there are creative trespassers everywhere. And so the end game with creative trespassing is to cause a creative revolution inside our bodies, our minds, and our cubicles. That's all. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
With the theme of International Women's Day being Balance for Better, can you talk about what balance means for you?
Sleeping 8 hours. You know what? So as in my introduction, you learned, I actually have gone through cancer 2 times. One when I was 21, one was when I was 31 years old. And when you've endured an illness, or if you're living with an illness, you are painfully aware of the body and the mind and the connection, or the moments when one wants to disconnect because it's painful and uncomfortable. And after enduring those 2 bouts of cancer, I realized I needed to take care of myself. So even though I'm sort of on book tour and I'm going back and back and how I care for myself is I eat well, and I'm open to dinners being paid for by anyone. Then I eat better. I eat well. I try to walk every day. And I say try because sometimes I'm limited in time. But even then, I literally will walk around like a hotel parking lot. My body feels better when it's walked. And also, I meditate, and that makes me consider what's in front of me rather than what's ahead of me. And I think that's really important, because if I'm not occupying the space right here and right now, I actually don't know what's going to be next. I won't be open to what's next, and I won't be open. So, yeah, that's it. Great question. Thank you.
First of all, great talk. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I do feel like you have the answers for everything, but I wanted to know, did you ever experience self-doubt in each of your journeys? And if yes, how did you combat that?
Oh, yes, all the time. And in fact, I'll go with the first thing that popped into my head. When I started my job at the museum, I don't have an art history background. I've never been a curator. I was the weirdest choice for that job. And so I was freaking out the day before, and I combated it by saying, what do I wear? How do I look arty? How do I look like I work in a museum? Because my big self-limiting belief since I was little until now was I don't fit in. I don't belong here. That has been a refrain in the past. So I'm aware of that. And so what I do is the same thing I've learned in theater school. You have to see an audience. You have to listen to an audience. You have to decide what you're going to give to an audience. And I don't mean this in a performative way. I mean this in like an interpersonal. So I'm like, okay, they're contemporary art. So I just sort of assessed the situation and thought, I will wear a blue shirt and an orange blazer and red glasses and some funky sneakers. Yes, I looked like a cartoon character, but it made me feel like I was embodying the spirit of art. So that's what I do. And also I was recently telling a story in front of, for The Moth, in front of 2,000 human beings, and I hadn't done a storytelling in that form, and I was scared, super scared. So here's what I did in that situation. I'm about to go on, and I say to myself, Tanya, if you pass out, you don't have to go on. Creative trespassing. No. And so this is something I've learned from one of my teachers, and from reading and watching her, Pema Chodron, is that when we're experiencing fear, it's sort of the last thing on our list to do to like embrace it, right? And she's like, go into it, barrel head first into fear. And then you realize, oh, it's not so bad. I came out on the other side. We always come out on the other side. You know that. And that's why the leap of faith is important. The middle part, you're like, ah! But you always know that you're going to land, right? And that it's going to be more than okay. So that's what I do.
Hey, so it's really cool to hear about how confident you are and like your purpose and what you bring to the table. And you've talked about like how it's important to, be grounded in that. How do you get to that point though? Like, if you could talk to that.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So first of all, the way in which we write books, the way in which we live lives, all of it is a practice. I approach it as a practice. I'm not the only one. There's a practice of meditation. Doctors practice medicine, right? Those who play instruments practice, okay? So when we think about it as a practice, and if it's a practice, guess what? It's never going to be perfect, right? It's a practice. So if we think of sort of building skills around, I want to be more curious, I want to be more confident, as practicing, I'm going to try on what confident looks like or feels like to me today. Okay, that didn't work. That's okay, but one moment within that, I did feel a little confident. Then you remember, then you try it again the next day, and then the next day. And then what happens is something I learned in theater, which is muscle memory. Guess what? Your body knows what to do. It shows up without your mind messing things up, okay? So you have to practice embodying what it is you want to be, and how you want to be in the world every day, a little bit. Is that helpful? Okay. And I think we're going to take 2 more questions. Okay.
How did you come to find your purpose? And what tools did you use? And which ones did you like most of all?
So I've written about this because it's taken me, lots of tools. And in creative trespassing, an exercise that I have it's called Write Your Fight Song, but really it's a manifesto. Who here knows what a manifesto is? Yeah, it's a powerful declaration of your purpose, of your why and your how. Like, yes, I declare this, and here's how I'm going to actually do something about it. So it's not passive, it's active. And so I've found I say purpose, because I don't think we have one purpose. And I think that this is also one of those system silo traps we find ourselves in. And I've definitely found myself in it. Like, I majored in theater. How come I can't get a job in theater? I have no purpose. End scene. No. Using my degree. And I've often found myself in that trap, and then I realized, oh wait, my purpose is and another indicator is what really enlivens you when you're in the act of doing it, right? So if you are coding and you're like, holy shit, this is so awesome, this feels good, and every fiber, or you're a problem solver, you're a presenter, and you're like, I like people, I like when they ask questions. Those are all indicators of your purpose. So. I guess buy the book and do the exercise. And also, just know that you monitor, you're the conductor of the experiment of you. And so you can be aware of situations where you feel like this makes me feel alive and it enlivens those around me. Maybe this is one of my purposes. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Okay, we had a creative trespasser question. Didn't need a microphone. Love that. How often do I burst into song, like in my daily life? Oh, well, I am known far and wide as the monotone wonder. So I don't typically, but I burst into song always when I'm on a road trip by myself. And I'm like, because I hit all the right notes when it's just an audience of me. But I dance all the time. So like in supermarkets and, conferences and things like that. Just, yeah, inadvertently even. Sometimes I'm like, what? That's awesome. So thanks for asking.
I was totally rooting for you with your Employee of the Month video, and I was curious if you actually won Employee of the Month.
Beautiful. Yeah. Okay. So again, my intention with doing these videos was to actually get to know my colleagues, engage them in a playful manner, and tick things off the boxes of my job. And what happened was, and I received that feedback of like, you're not a good hire, Tania Katan, get rid of her, la la la. I got an email, and do you ever get that ominous email that's everyone, all employees meet in the boardroom? I received an email from HR that was that, and I was like, oh my God! And so I kind of like slowly walked in. I walked in the room, everybody was seated there and very like stiff, and all of a sudden, the head of HR said, Tania, we'd like to present you with something. And a video camera comes out, and they present me with this big plaque that says, almost Employee of the Month. And to me, that's the best metric for succeeding, is that not only are they connecting to, but they're also engaging in play and creativity. So that was a really wonderful moment. Thank you for asking. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.